What's up, everybody? Hope you are doing good. So today's video is actually going to be on a topic that really can make a lot of people uncomfortable, but it's something that is inevitable as part of life, and it's something that we're pretty much, we are going to all experience it one day, and that is death. I remember being a child, and I think this is kind of common in a lot of children. I know my brother went through the same thing when he was a child, and I had a few cousins that went through the same thing as well, and that is when you're a child, you eventually learn about death. Maybe have an experience with it, with the loss of a grandparent or somebody close, and it definitely did for me. It can leave some trauma behind. And I remember learning about what death is, and also from church, they talk about the whole you die and then the heaven and hell thing, and I remember I went through it was a pretty long time of almost having a phobia of dying, and not only of me dying, but I also realized that my parents are gonna die too. And I was probably maybe 5 or 6, and I just remember thinking about it a lot, and I would just get very anxious and get scared and sometimes get hysterical and cry and go to my mom and talk to her about it. And I was very hard to console when it came to that. But the older I got, the fear still carried on. And, one day I sat and thought to myself, I was like, I am going to die, regardless if I'm scared or not. It is going to happen. And I don't want to live my life scared like this. Because when you really fear death, I think it really holds you back in life. You're scared to kind of venture out because you're always scared that something's going to happen to you. And I got to a point, I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. So instead of running from the fear or trying to suppress it, I actually I turned around and went straight into the fear and really dug deep into myself to figure out exactly what was going on. And also, y'all, recently, it was a couple weeks ago, my grandmother died. She was 79, and it came as a shock. I mean, it really did, because she lived a long life, but she wasn't sick. But it's like all of a sudden, she didn't really even have any health problems, but it's like all of a sudden one day she got sick. And was in the hospital and died 2 days later, and it came so sudden. And this is my mother's mom, and excuse me, and it really hurt her real bad. She's still grieving a lot because my mother was the youngest of 5 children, so she was the baby of the family, and she was the one that was closest to my grandmother more than all the children. And I was very close to them growing up. I grew up living beside them, so as a child I used to go up there every day. I used to go eat supper at night with them, and so it definitely it bothered me a lot that it happened so sudden and was so unexpected. But I just remember a lot of my family members called me and was talking to me about my Nana dying. And when people in my family die, or when somebody knows somebody that's died, a lot of people call me because I very much have a faith and a strong belief in what happens to us after we die. And after years of studying a lot of spiritual text, and not only reading the Bible, I've read a lot of different studied a lot of different religious concepts about what happens after we die. I've watched a lot of videos on near-death experiences. That is something that I just love. I'm fascinated by them because they all have such similarities that it's just absolutely crazy. But they're also very unique to the one experience. And there's also shared near-death experiences where people die together and they experience something together. Guys, I mean, it's really wild. A lot of people, you'll see people dismiss it that it's hallucinations or it's your brain dying, but there's just something about it and stuff that I have experienced in life as well that really makes me think otherwise. And something also, guys, that happened whenever my grandma died. It was right before she took her last few breaths. She was laying there with her eyes closed, and she kept saying home, home, and then the last words she spoke was, she said mama, talking about her mother, her name was, we called her grandma. And I met her, I remember her. She died probably a good 15 years ago, and we just thought that was so crazy. And she was speaking, the way she said it was almost as if she was standing right in front of her. And my mother told me, my mother was standing right there. She said all of a sudden after she said that, she just got almost smiled and looked so peaceful, and then took her last breath, and she died. So she died very comfortably in a bed, very peacefully surrounded by her children. And that's a beautiful thing. Some people don't quite get that, but Whenever my, mom told me about that, it really, that really touched me, and I've thought about that every single day since. It's stuff like that that I hear about and things that I read that really have helped me conquer the fear of death. And guys, I can honestly say now, after all the studying and after kind of going through all the trauma I had around death, I am no longer afraid to die at all. Yes, I'm young. I'm 29 years old. I have more things in life that I want to do. I want to have my own family. I want to have my own children. I want that dream house that I've always, thought about, and my dream career on YouTube and be successful. Yes, I want all that, and I don't want to die young. But I do know when my time comes, I am not scared at all. It's something I find a lot of peace around it. And even right now, y'all, I'm shooting this video in a graveyard. I love graveyards. I love going to them. I just love looking at how old some of the tombstones are. But I find peace around the subject of death now because of everything that I've studied and some of the beautiful stories that, people have about other people dying or themselves dying, some of the experiences and stories that they've shared. And also I know several people in my life that they have had experiences around death. I had a great aunt that had a near-death experience herself, and y'all really need to take a look into watching those videos on people with near-death experiences because they are absolutely life-changing. And if you can read if you're interested in reading any spiritual text or any religious books, I definitely recommend that, because I found that in all the religions there was there was kind of one base thing in all of them, and that they all taught love, and that they all teach that we are basically a soul having a human experience in the physical world, and then when we die we return to where we came from. And I truly believe that. I believe we have chosen the life purposely before we came, and we're here to learn lessons, and then when we learn what we need to learn, when we're done, that's when we our time comes to pass away and we return back to where we came, basically going to heaven. I do believe there's different levels of heaven based, I do believe in karma, and I definitely do believe in reincarnation, because I did a past life regression one time, and at first I was skeptical about it. I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about this or what I believe, but I read stories, watched videos on people, and they were pretty convincing. They were pretty wild, some of the things that happened. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it myself. So I did it, and it lasted probably about an hour, and I really saw glimpses that seemed so real of me. There was one that I was an old lady, and it was probably back in the 1800s. It was nothing wild, like I was a queen. Some people have these far-fetched ones that I'm not quite sure I believe, but mine was, it was a simple lady, and it was like in Europe or something. Just in the house cleaning, cooking, and it was definitely around the 1800s time, and there was children around. And I also do believe that the people that are in our life now that we're the closest to and that we have the strongest connections with, we have kind of a soul contract with. We've had many past lives with them, and we will have many more after this until it's our time to finish. But I do believe we play different roles in each of those lives. Right now, my mother could have been a sister in a past life, or you can change your gender in different lives. You can be female, you can be male, and it's something so cool to learn about. So guys, if y'all are interested in learning about that, I definitely recommend looking up past life regressions. But overall, the whole thing about this video that I want y'all to know is that there is nothing to be afraid of when it comes to death. And if you have experienced a lot of trauma around death, I know some of the things that happen to people, some of the ways people die can be horrible. They can be traumatic, and they can really scar a family and really place a lot of grief and a huge burden on them. And I understand that. I'm not denying that. It definitely, death can be painful because you feel like you're never going to see that person again. But I truly believe that we will, and I do believe they are around us at all times. They just, they're not in their body anymore. Their energy, and they can communicate in their own ways. You just gotta kind of know what to look for. I definitely, my grandfather, I was very close to him. He died back in 2017. He was like a father figure to me, and I talk to him a lot. I go to his grave, and also, y'all, I don't know if I've ever said this on here, but I don't know if y'all know who the Long Island medium is, Teresa Caputo. A lot of people, I'm sure somebody on here is gonna be like, oh, she's fake, whatever. Well, I don't believe that, because I went and got a reading by her, I remember before I went to meet her, I went to my grandpa's grave up in the upstate of South Carolina where he's buried. I went there and I told him, I said, Papa, please come through and show me you're around. You know, let me know that you were here and that you're okay. Okay, well, I went to this event, y'all. There was like 2,000 people there, and it was in Knoxville, Tennessee. I went with my ex-boyfriend. All right, so his mother had also passed away years ago. Well, she walked out on stage and she introduced herself, and the first person she went to was my ex-boyfriend. And he was beside himself at how accurate she was. Well, then she looked at me and told me to stand up, and I was like, oh my God, because I actually had my grandpa's favorite ring in my pocket. And I'm also named after him with the same middle name and same last name. So, you know, it's a family name. That name's been passed down for generations on my dad's side. But, you know, she kept talking about how he was saying that I was his namesake, and that I was, you know, she figured out that I was named after him. And I was like, okay, you know, that's kind of weird. And then she asked me, she said, there's something that you carry around of his that, you know, is special to you. And I was like, oh, you know, I was like, oh crap, you know, my ring, that ring is in my pocket. And then what really got me was on his grave, y'all, there, he was a fisherman. He loved to fish. There is a little fisherman kind of engraved under his name. And, you know, my family, we always joked and said that little guy just looked like Huckleberry Finn. And when I was getting that reading from her, I was standing there in front of all those people, and she told me, she's like, what is their, how do you relate to Huck Finn? And I was like, oh crap, and that spooked me. I got chills for that one, and that right there, that proved me. I was like, there is something to this. And I left that place. She also told me that I was going to be a dad, and that I was going to be a great father. And, you know, I was in tears by that point. And I'm not much of a crier, y'all. I don't like crying in front of people. It takes a lot to get the tears rolling on me, and that got me, especially in front of all those people. So when I left there, I was a little embarrassed, but I'm so glad I went, and I would not trade that experience for the world. But guys, so I just hope y'all got something good out of this video. Sorry for rambling on. You know, like this video, subscribe to my channel. I'll be back in a week or so with another video. I hope y'all have a wonderful week, and I will see y'all soon. Bye.